let me ask you about Putin.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of difficult conversations, so if I sit down with somebody like Vladimir Putin or Vladimir Zelensky, what's the right way to have that conversation?
Oh, man.
We can talk about that one, or we could talk about somebody more well understood through history, like something like Stalin or Hitler, something like that. Maybe that's an easier example to illustrate how to handle extremely difficult conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I can handle really difficult conversations between like two people. Leaders of countries, though, there's so much that you are representing in that conversation. I guess the thing that would be interesting to me would be like, what is Vladimir Putin's interest? Like, what is the genuine interest that he has in the conflict? Because I think finding out like what is your buy-in or what is the driving force keeping you here is probably the most important thing. I think for Zelensky, I think it's quite a bit more simpler because he's on the defense, so it's defending his country and his people. For Putin, I've heard all sorts of things. Dugin has his writings on, like the East versus the West, the collapse of the West in the face of like all of the liberalism and the weird LGBT stuff that they criticize. You've got the desire to like return to this like former Soviet Union-esque thing. You've got Putin's quotes that the collapse of the Soviet Union was the biggest geopolitical disaster, of 20th century. And I guess figuring out like what is Putin after? I'm not actually sure. I don't know the answer to that question. I know a lot of people write about it, but yeah.
Well, there's a lot of answers to that question. There's a lot of answers that he can give to that question. So say I sit down with him for 3 hours and talk about it. I think this is a really interesting distinction because you do difficult conversations in the space of ideas. But also in your stream, there's a bunch of drama going on. There's the human psychology is laid out. In its full richness before you. So to me, with leaders, I think a part of the conversation has to be about the human psychology.
Sure.
Not like a meta conversation, but like really understand what they feel, what they fear, who they are as a human being. Like as a family man, as a person proud of their country, as a person with an ego, as a person who's been affected, if not corrupted by power, as all of us can be and likely are. So all of that gives context to then the answers about what do you want in this war. Because the answers about what you want in this war will be political answers. It's like a game that's being played, again, with words. And politicians are incredibly good at playing that game. I think the deeper truth comes from understanding the human being from which those words come.